emails end up here in the abyss? Well, stay tuned because today we are going to master the art of cold outreach. If this is your first time seeing a Busy Book Club video, welcome. My name is Mike, and every day we cover a chapter of new and interesting books. Today we are covering Step 2, Run Down the Alley, of Alex Banayan's The Third Door. Let's get started. Now, a question I've been asking myself as we've been going through this book is, why did Alex Banayan choose to write it this way? Why not just dedicate a chapter to each of the people he interviewed? Why not have Chapter 1 be Bill Gates, Chapter 2 be Steven Spielberg, Chapter 3 Tim Ferriss? He could do that in a very linear, sensible way, and it would probably still be a very good book. I realized that what he's doing is he's trying to show how he's applying these lessons throughout his own journey, because it shows that the successful people don't necessarily go in with this grand vision and they're just confident with it all the way to the end. It's a process of adapting and learning from mistakes and self-discovery. And I think presenting it through his own story was actually pretty clever, even though he does kind of have to show some of his mistakes. That's very evident in his Tim Ferriss interview, where Tim Ferriss is sending him all these signals about how he's being a little bit rude and a little bit obnoxious, and he's thinking he's just being persistent, but he's actually digging himself a hole. Now, part 2 covered quite a bit. It had 4 chapters, and there were quite a few different stories. We heard about some of the incredible risks that Steven Spielberg took to become a director. We heard about this amazing work ethic from Chi Lu, and we heard about this concept of the hidden reservoir from Ray Sugar Leonard. And those were all incredible stories, and I highly recommend you check them out in the book. But what I want to focus on is some of the cold outreach lessons that we learned from the Tim Ferriss interview, because it's a master class in how to do cold outreach. And Alex Banayan sets the stage really well here, because he's kind of a stalker. He's waiting in the bathroom for Tim Ferriss, which is super weird. And by the way, that's the toilet in San Francisco in that list of items we talked about yesterday. This is how he actually first meets Tim Ferriss in person. You can imagine that that's kind of awkward, but eventually he does get to have a phone call with Tim Ferriss. And it turns out that Tim Ferriss is very thoughtful and very intentional about how he crafts emails to people he doesn't know. And he has a few lessons. Number 1, just as a baseline, you have to be respectful. And this is where Tim Ferriss started to drop hints for Alex that, hey, you were being kind of rude. You were a little too intense. There's a difference between persistence and being annoying. And then the second lesson was borrowed credibility. And the concept of borrowed credibility is where you do work that aligns with where you want to go, so that when you do this cold outreach, it actually makes sense why you're reaching out to that person. You're not reaching out saying, hey, I want to learn more about this thing. You're actually saying, I'm in this club, I'm in this organization, I wrote this piece of work. You're actually giving the recipient a reason to care about what you're saying. Then the third lesson is to just put your question in the email. Don't ask for an interview. Don't say, I want to pick your brain. Because an interview or a coffee chat, all of those things take time. And for a VIP, that's not going to be something that's valuable to them. It's only valuable to you. If you just put your question in the email, it makes it a little bit easier for them to say yes, and it's not this big nebulous thing. 4 is avoid superlatives. Don't tell the person that this is going to be the most valuable experience for them. You don't know enough about them to say that. And then the 5th lesson is don't say thanks in advance. Because when someone says thanks in advance, they're implying that they expect you to say yes, and nothing sounds more entitled than that. In the book, there's an actual template, which I will put on screen, and I will also put it in the description if you're interested. And we're going to go through it step by step. First, you want to acknowledge that the person is busy. And I think that demonstrates a certain level of self-awareness, that you realize you're the person asking for something and you know that that person's busy. That's a really good way of demonstrating that you know where you stand. Second, you want to establish credibility, and for that you can lean on the borrowed credibility concept earlier. And then you want to ask your question, and that gives them something to chew on. They can look at that and they can know exactly what you want. And then finally, you tell them that you will be happy with a short reply. And I think what Tim Ferriss is doing here is he's trying to get the recipient over the hurdle of sending a reply. He's lowering the bar for what a good reply is by letting the response be just 1 or 2 sentences having the question up front so the person doesn't have to check their schedule or anything. He's making it really easy for the person to say yes. And at that point, that's the beginning of a conversation, because once they've said yes to the conversation, then you can ask more questions. Then you can potentially build it into a full-fledged relationship. This email template is incredibly well thought out and very intentional in how it delivers its message. If you want to copy paste it, I'll leave it in the description. Otherwise, if you want to see more of the third door on this channel, you can see the next video here. Otherwise, if you want to catch up with the rest of us, the introduction video will be here. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you tomorrow.